So, you or your thankless family bought the game you've waited anxiously for, or you've picked it up on sale due to a recommendation from your closest and dearest confidant, Tom. Here he is, here. You pop open the case, slide that pristine disc into your console of choice, wait through those horrendous loading times just for the opportunity to select New Game. Then you wade through those opening tutorials, blitzing your way through dangerous armies of red and white targets, beating the ever-loving hell with those sacks of wheat, and then being taught how to jump like you're fresh out the womb before you are finally given free reign over your actions and placed into this world of which you'll be spending hundreds of hours exploring, breathing, and experiencing. Ah yes, those first few steps of freedom. You know, there's really nothing quite like a fresh new game. Explosions, gunshots, sword art, swooshes, and gigantic monsters of metal you have to defeat. You have to save the world. Nope, not those other incredibly hot sexy warriors. You, come on now, fight, fight, fight! Explore.
So many question marks.
You know what would make this gorgeous scenery better? That's right, Geralt, fighting! Slay the dragon, stop those nukes, rescue that princess, defeat the big bad evil guys, and save the world. You've come a long way since those early sparring matches with inanimate objects. You've mastered the game, bested every single enemy that's been thrown your way, completed it completely, made allies for life, and then you've turned your back on that sunset and it's over. And the credits begin to roll. So, well, what are you supposed to do now? You find yourself in a menu, or in an open world that is still, by all means, open, but has now been rendered hollow. The memory of that story, that gameplay, is one you will cherish for a lifetime, but there's still this emptiness. You wander aimlessly through this hollow world as it starts to sink in. You'll never get that experience again. You have seen everything this game has to offer. There are no new quest lines, missions, and every single dialogue option that there is to hear has been heard by you. And yes, there are more games out there, other experiences yet to experience. But there is no more this. And if you think like this, feel these feelings, then you're quite like me. Now, the very first time I became aware of this phenomenon, I was playing The Witcher 3. I spent hundreds of hours playing through every quest, checking off almost every point of interest, picking up and eating every piece of bread, every scrap of fruit, because I never found a formula for the only healing potion in the game. Even with my self-inflicted challenge, I had done all of that, beaten the Wild Hunt before sending Ciri on a one-way trip to a frozen hell to never return, leaving Geralt all alone in this harsh world. Playing through the game once more, Ciri returned from that frozen hellscape and became my Witcher buddy for life, and Geralt was in a partly faultless relationship with Yennefer. Team Yen all the way, by the way. This was it, the final showdown, mano e mano. Okay, he's dead. After watching the ending I'd worked so hard for in its entirety, I had done it. Everything was finished. And I wanted more. The experience had been so eye-opening to me, a genre I barely stepped a toe into before suddenly was at the forefront of my mind. The story, god, the visuals, wow, the characters. From the albeit self-proclaimed greatest bard the world had ever seen, to the strong, fearless sorceress, Yennefer. The intimidating Var Emrys, the Mad King Radovid, the witches, bloody Baron Zoltan, Shive, and so much more. These characters, I will not forget. So, after having grown so attached to these characters, it was a rather strange and bewildering experience when, upon completing the game, they weren't there anymore. You see, the odd thing The Witcher 3 does is remove every major character from the in-game world. Spring break at the Rosemarie Thyme? Zoltan and Dandelion won't be there to bro out with you. Your Witcher stronghold Kaer Morhen will seem eerily empty. You have the birds and the bees, and maybe a shopkeeper or two to keep you company. Not only are there no more quests for you to take part in, Now there are no more characters to console you through this fact. The world is empty, and if you completed the game on its hardest difficulty, Death March, and play through the quite brilliant DLCs, then there really are no further challenges and no further experiences you can have with the game. And that might leave you feeling a little hollow. I sure felt that way. Now, this dreary feeling's actually an issue that most gamers will come across. The issue is well known and differs in its impact from person to person. And this issue is not isolated to gaming. In fact, any individual can experience this after every one of their experiences. This includes different forms of media. Say you finish a movie and you may stop and think, well, that was great, but what do I do now? Scroll through the various forums out there and you'll find that the question is on the very tip of everyone's tongue. Yes, from the likes of Reddit to Quora to Club Penguin, users are baffled by the reasons as to why they feel this sense of loss after having completed a video game. So, why is this? Well, an eye-opening article penned, or rather typed, Ian Lecklitner provides some insight into this. Within the article, the author goes into his love for Naruto. And Naruto's an animated show, its prominence and significance in modern culture, difficult to escape from even if you try to ninja run away from it. Am I right, lads? Anyway, Ian goes on to state that he watched all of Naruto, over 240 hours of it, to be exact. And afterwards, what did he experience? That's right, crippling depression. And there's more, a sense of hopelessness, and a fear of what is beyond his favourite show's, I'm sure, climactic and satisfying ending. I don't know if it was satisfying, I haven't watched Naruto. They may have Game of Thrones it, I don't know if that reference is even relevant. I hope it is, so, oh god, am I old? I don't know.
How do you do, fellow kids?
Anyway, so why did he feel this? And why are you and I feeling this way? Well, within the article, according to anxiety specialist Ken Foss, this is because you and I get lost in the experience. We develop real relationships with these characters under a fictional subtense. We persist in finding something in their personality that we can latch onto. And if we find it, we can identify with these characters, thus blurring the lines between the real world and this fictional one. Sure, that's a professional's opinion, but do you want mine? Tough, you're getting it anyway. Unless you click off the video, please don't click off the video, please watch it. Come on guys, I need money for my family, come on. Well, you'll be shocked to hear that I completely agree with the professional's opinion. Throughout my life, I've leaned towards games with incredible character building and stories. Characters which I can identify with. Somewhat, at least. For example, I love The Last of Us. Not exactly a groundbreaking opinion, I know, but it was a game where I loved the characters so much that the gameplay took the furthest backseat on the bus and was chilling with the cool kids. Don't get me wrong, it was good gameplay, but the story and those characters, those are the things that will stick with me from The Last of Us. Now here's Joel, a post-apocalyptic, single father once removed, action hero of a man. I am none of those things, so it was difficult for me to initially identify with Joel. But it was in the emotional moments where I found some common ground with the guy. You see, closer to the beginning of the game, you're unsure as to whether Joel should really snap this guy's arm, but after playing through the game in Joel's shoes, and after witnessing all of the cruelty and despair this world has to offer you, all of the heart-wrenching moments that make you just want to scream, you come to realise that maybe, just maybe, this is the way it needs to be. And all of that conditioning culminates in Joel making a decision at the end of the game that I fully agree with. I defend Joel for, and in the scenario, would make myself. Via means of excellent writing, endless brick throwing and brick smashing, I identified with Joel. And the same could be said for The Witcher 3. I mean, did I really love the fact that one skill tree was, in comparison to the others, completely useless? No. And did I really like the fact that the game tends to shepherd you down this endless gameplay road of spamming Quen, attacking, diving, getting knocked down but I get up again, spamming Quen, and so on and so forth? No, not particularly, but I didn't think about it because everything else in between those moments was incredibly well done. If I ever do a review on The Witcher 3, I'll go into the matter more. But the bottom line is, the main draw for me in a game is a great story, unbelievable, or just downright charismatic characters. And so it should be obvious then that when every single character is whisked away at the end of the game, that would affect me or anyone else who played through the game greatly. And if you think about it, it's such an odd choice for a game company to make. Perhaps this was a small mercy, a means to communicate to the player with finality that the game is now over, everyone's moved on, and maybe, just maybe, you should also. Now, what they don't tell you about this feeling is how to move on beyond it, and that'll be discussed in due time, I assure you, but for now, I believe a brief explanation is in order. Do we have a name for this condition? Well, yes, we do actually, thanks for asking. It's called post-game depression, and it's been theorized to have 5 stages, as Gabby Ferreira reports. Ferreira? I'm going Ferreira. As Gabby Ferreira reports, these 5 stages are akin to the 5 stages of grief. You know, you got your denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And these all do what they say on the tin. Take a little bit of denial at the fact you've actually completed the game. A dash of jeu d'angle at the game maybe not living up to your expectations or not having a long enough playtime. A sprinkling of bargaining when one wishes to go back in time to experience the game all over again. Cover it all in some depression icing. I believe we discussed that earlier. And then, at the end of it all, acceptance. But we'll save that one for later. What I can say with certainty is that we possess an undeniable bond with these games. A bond which specialist Foss likens the process of moving on from to the process of moving on from a breakup. And of course it realistically isn't as serious as a real life breakup, but it can definitely feel that way. The emotions you feel after having completed a game can be heightened to nearly obscene levels. You know you shouldn't get that attached to these characters, to this game, but you do. And if a game developer can invoke these feelings in the player, then all the credit should go to them. So CD Projekt Red? Well played. I've got to admit, you got me. They created a game that doesn't fit within the stereotypical picture of video games. They go above and beyond, slowly investing you in their setting, then in their characters. Yes, others have done it before, but not many can hold a candle to what CD Projekt Red have done here. And others have and will continue to follow their lead in the future. And in order to follow that lead, they would have to go above and beyond both setting and character, because CD Projekt Red are equals to or better than most other developers in one particular element of game design. A major plus to the game to all who have played it, and a major draw to the game for returning players, is The Witcher 3's beautifully cultivated world. And I'm not referring to the gorgeous landscapes, or the bustling streets of Novigrad, or the way the wind and the rain sweeps through the trees on a stormy night. Although, come on, they're pretty good, right? I mean, look at whatever this monstrosity is. I will never grow tired of nature's beauty. No, I'm talking about how CD Projekt Red creates a realistic world, and considering the setting they imposed on themselves, to do this is a great achievement. My theory here being that the more elements you add that detract away from our real, unfortunately, non-magical world, the more difficult it is to instill that sense of realism, to get that feeling to land in the player that this world, this setting, and these characters could really exist. Take zombie media, for example, or just zombie games, at least, and all they add is one simple, albeit compelling, element into their respective worlds. It's zombies, guys. They add zombies. The degree of separation between the real world you're currently living in and the zombie world is so small. They are but a stone's throw away from each other, and that's part of what makes them scary. But it's also the reason why it's easier to present a realistic, believable, gritty story within the confines of this dark context. Easier to create a bleak world for your bleak characters to live in. And you, the player, only being one undead edition away from this dark reality, can get a greater understanding of why the world is the way it is, why it's reacted this way, and why the characters are the way they are. There's only one fictional thing present in these stories, in these worlds, and if you don't vibe with it, well, you can vibe with everything else, because it's steeped in realistic objects, buildings, settings, and so much more. It is also my opinion then, that a far greater challenge rests in creating a realistic, fantastical setting. And yes, you can rely on your characters here, on their interactions, to bridge the gap between the real world and this completely fictional one. Where ogres, dragons, and whatever the hell this is. Seriously, why is this? Why does it keep coming up? But CD Projekt Red go further. They get you to believe in all these little towns, in all these massive sprawling cities, by using a little technique we in the biz like to call world building. They do this in a rather clever and believable way, and it starts almost instantly in the tutorial area of White Orchard. Geralt and Witcher bro Vesemir, after a short conversation,
What's this postscript? I still have the unicorn? Stuffed unicorn. Used it once or twice. In certain situations.
ride slowly on their steeds in this quaint little area. And what hits you first is the lighting, the way it seeps in through the trees. And then you notice the nature and the beauty of it all. And then the ravages of war, the consequences of bloodshed, houses burnt to a crisp, openly weeping townsfolk in despair watching over grim, loosely swaying bodies. It's a perfect, isolated encapsulation of everything that will be represented as an ongoing theme later on in the game. Additionally to this, we have the conversations between Geralt and Vesemir, which only serve in enhancing the setting you're experiencing and giving some background into both the world and the opinions of this world that the characters both possess. However, without the additional dialogue, this scene lays down a marker for the tone of the game to come. It gets you invested in the world, in its conflicts, while also indirectly telling you that Geralt is a bystander in this conflict, at this point in the game anyway. The game uses this on-rails style of storytelling and world building to great effect here. They use it again in Velen, in Novigrad, and once more in Skellige. Now, on-rails is a well-known branch of gameplay that is used by a lot of games out there, especially older games, and what it essentially refers to is your in-game character being unable to move, but able to aim, and perhaps turn their body around 360 in your vehicle of choice, leaving your character as essentially a train on rails, the rails dictating where you are to go. Now you may notice that the Witcher 3 example is not the purest form of an on-rails gaming experience, but it works for the point I'm trying to make, so I'm not going to change it. Nevertheless, most games use these gaming segments as merely that, an experience in gameplay, not as a means to intricately world build. And The Witcher 3 is that much better for having included these scenes. And it's scenes like these that hit the hardest. No, not at first, but they wear down on you the more and more they're present in the game. Yes, the big, somber moments that are drawn attention to throughout the story are great. They are, but it's in these subtle touches where the game generates realism. And realism, being able to think that upon one glance out your window, Kate Troller will be in view. Thinking that if you pop down to your local bar, Geralt and co will be there, offering you a drink. Whipping their decks out on the table, ready to play a heated game of Gwent. And that might sound crazy to you. It probably is crazy, but hear me out, hear me out. That's the amount of emotional connection people feel to these characters, and that is all due to the great effort the team at CD Projekt Red have made. Their mesh of storytelling and gameplay, their memorable character writing, their grand stakes story, horrifically beautiful monster design, and just regularly beautiful landscapes. All of it came together at the right time in this one game, which resulted in a near masterpiece and one of the greatest games I've ever played. And one of the most difficult games for me to walk away from. So, in summary, you're invested in the characters, in the story, and in the world. And if you're not, that's okay too, because you've got epic battles with giant frogs coming just around the corner. But let's just say you're playing, and you're playing, and you're playing. Either after a few days, after playing bit by bit after school or work, or you picked up the game 2 years ago, and you're still making your way around the Skellige Ocean, picking up every single bit of loot you can find. Either way, the game will build and build to this earth-shattering conclusion, and then nothing. It simply and completely comes to a stop. And I've skirted around this question a couple times throughout the video, but I just haven't answered it. And I apologise if it's the only thing you've been waiting for, but there's a very good reason for my stalling, I assure you. The main reason is, I wasn't too sure on how to give the answer. When you have experts, specialists and authors in this area stating that finishing a game or an experience can send you into a period of mourning. Not unlike mourning after the loss of a family member, the answer becomes difficult to give because this is a serious issue and I want to be relatively serious with it. Only in this part, I promise. But here it is. How do you get over a game that redefined your perception of what a game could be? I'll cover all bases. I'll start with the professionals' methods. One is quite a deep one, but useful. Go out there into the real world and participate in life. Think of the positives and live for those moments. 2. Tell others about the story. Maybe you'll find some common ground with people and you can both share and reminisce about your time in the game. And 3, I don't know if it would help me, but you could try writing down your experience with the game and how it changed you as a person. And now here's the fun part that you probably shouldn't take real notice in, but here's my 2 cents on the matter. There are a few methods to get over this feeling. This is based on personal experience, by the way. I'm certainly not hiding any doctorates here. I'm not a professional, okay? I'm just a guy that played a game. Option 1. Replay the game. So you didn't like the ending? Try again. Take your time with it on this playthrough, perhaps. Explore every corner of the game's world. I guarantee you'll find something you hadn't even seen before. It may seem like you've seen it all, but there are always different angles to seek aim or hunt from. Different methods of taking down lesions. Get crazy with it. Put a skill point in the potion skill tree. Wait a year, play it again for the nostalgia boost. There's always something more to experience with repeat playthroughs. Or 2. Endlessly beg for a sequel that most likely won't be released, and even if it does, probably won't be released for another several years, by which time you may have moved on. 3. Move on. It's easier said than done, I know, but it's entirely possible. Okay, 4th exercise. Bear with me, please. I want you to remember back to the very first game you picked up controller or plugged in a mouse and keyboard for. How many years ago was that? 2? 5? 40? Remember how you felt while playing that game? Of course you do. Do you remember that story or absence of one? Do you remember that first item pickup? Do you remember that first vehicle you got into? Do you remember that time when that oh so sweet no-scope landed? Final kill count too. And now think about every other single game since then where you've had this inescapable experience of being drawn deeper and deeper into what these games had to offer you. You felt as though you could have been playing that very first game once again. You see, to move on from this experience is to accept that this game has come to an end. You see, you've been through those 5 stages before, and you've come through them every single time. And if this is your first time dealing with this, then take solace in the fact that others around you have been in this situation, and they have come through. They've accepted, and in doing so, have moved on. Whether that game that reminded you of your first was a life-changing experience, or just kept you entertained for a week, it remains, in that moment, a positive experience for you, and it is so important to seek out those positive experiences. Games still have so much to offer you. If you need to escape from the daily grind every once in a while, they aren't going anywhere. There will always be new experiences. And while time is on your side, then it just might be true that your new favourite game might just be around that corner. There's life beyond that TV show, that movie, that game. You see, there's always life beyond the end game.